Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Apprenticeship Dialogue series on leveraging apprenticeship in creating human capital. Our session for today will focus on IT and ITES sector, which is currently facing headwinds. The operating margins are declining, driven by supply side challenges with higher talent, cost, attrition rate, and price pressures. The IT skill gap is getting significantly worse as organizations grapple with technical talent shortage and employee retention amid ever-evolving IT landscape. In today's session, we will understand and analyze the talent situation in the sector and look at the possible solution to bridge the skill gap and how to create a talent supply chain that can kind of future-proof this kind of a shortage. We have with us Mr. Girish Kulkarni, who heads the apprenticeship and RPL division of NASSCOM Future Skills. And we have Mr. Dependra, head of human resource development for Infosys BPM. So welcome both of you, and thank you so much for joining us to share your thoughts and opinions on how do we overcome the skill challenge, and also give us a little bit of understanding what's the current situation looks like, and some of the initiatives that either your organization or as NASSCOM would be undertaking to overcome the current situation. So my very first question is for you, Mr. Dependra, that how is the talent situation? If you just give us a little bit of overview, how does it looks like, and how is it kind of impacting the growth of the sector?
Thank you, Sumit, for inviting me for this panel. It's an honor to interact with you at Mr. Girish. This is indeed a very interesting time for the IT and ITES sector. It's interesting because there is so much of demand for digital skills which are coming from all across the world, from all across different clients. There is demand because the COVID situation has made people realize, the companies realize that the only way that they can grow and sustain the businesses and create better experiences for their customers and their employees is to go digital. And when they go digital, there's a lot of demand for those kind of skills. And the people in India should be very happy to know that, a lot of that demand is getting funneled into India. Almost every company has got their order books full. Almost every company has no shortage of demand at this moment. And of course, these are all cycles, as we all know. What seems to be constraining today's industry is the fact that there's not enough supply. And I think that that's something which is leading to a good amount of churn in the industry, which does no good to anybody on the long run. On the short run, yes, candidates are getting better offers, but on the long run, that's something which is just not sustainable as an industry, because as a country we will lose our competitive edge, and we'll have the same people going around in the country if we don't do something about it. And as an HR leader, I'm extremely concerned about the fact that is our competitiveness of the talent slowly going away, and we need to do urgent things in this area to ensure that we get this act right.
Yes, definitely. But tell me, what's the reason why we have arrived at a situation where there is a talent crunch? Do you think there's enough of investments which is being made to create talent? Were we prepared? Did we foresee a situation like this arising, which is now kind of impacting the entire business? We've heard about the Great Resignation. We've heard about how the organization is resorting to some insane initiatives to retain their talent. Some of them are friendly, some of them are not so friendly. But what's your take on that? Do you think industry is kind of what led to the situation, and what's the learning that the sector has today to avoid a situation like this in future?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid question, because if you ask the same question about 2 years back, I think the mood was absolutely despondent. There were customers across the world who were going down. And, there was a lockdown in India, and there were people who were losing their jobs. I think nobody could have that time thought long term, saying that, what really is going to happen to the sector. So therefore, a lot of the thinking which different companies had was obviously very short term, which is quite understandable. But the fact is that, that any investment on something which is infrastructure, and to that extent, talent building is infrastructure. That's something which can't go down. And I think a lot of the companies and the industry as a whole did stop investing in talent, did stop investing in creating talent outside. All of course, for the reason of ensuring that we have sustenance, or at least the companies are afloat at that point in time. And when the demand returned, and this is in my career, this is probably the fifth time that there was a slowdown, which is just followed by a boom. We saw the first in 2001, when there was a 9/11 which happened in US.
Yeah.
There was a boom, and Y2K had just kind of got over, and everybody said that this is the end of the IT industry, and there was a boom after that. The same thing happened in 2008, when there was a financial sector crisis, and 1 year later we were all struggling for talent. So to that, in hindsight, it does appear that we were caught on the wrong foot as an industry, as different companies, and we should have continued our investment in talent right through the pandemic, while of course balancing the short-term needs which every organization has to do. So we were clearly underprepared. The issue also was that a lot of companies did not hire from their campuses. So there were people who were campus hiring dates were delayed, things like that. Fortunately, there is some respite in that, because in the last we were doing this calculation, it looks like almost 5 lakh new talent has got into the IT industry, ITS industry, which means that they will of course then take their own time to get scaled up to what companies really require to deliver to the clients. But at least there is some silver lining in this entire talent, and I'm sure that a lot of work that we can all do together, and supporting NASSCOM, and of course taking good help from companies like yours, Sumit. I'm sure that we can do something which can make this sector sustainable.
But is it also the fact that the kind of requirements, and because of dynamism that the sector has, and the way the technology is evolving, I mean, the technology gets created, gets obsolete, the very movement of that, and then you see that there are versions coming up and different technologies coming up. So is it that because the pace at which the way the technology is changing, is that the organizations are not able to cope up to create talent at the same pace? Or is it the inability to foresee the kind of changes that is there? Do you think there's a little bit of mismatch on that front?
Yeah, I think that's something which is not new, Sumit, what you're saying. Quite clearly, in our industry, in fact, not just in our industry, but all industries across the world, on the IT side as well as in other places, there is a demand and supply mismatch, not just in quantum of skills, but the kind of skills which are required. And I think that leads us to the point that, look, skilling is not something which is it's not a one-time thing in your life. You have to keep doing it all through as an individual, and as a company, you have to be always on the running to ensure that you have the right kind of skills. So this is a long-term game. It's not something that it is something that we do it it'll get over. We have to continuously keep investing, and both it's a problem of quantity as well as futuristic mindset.
So it's all about that investment in continuity in learning, or we talk about the upskilling and the skilling. It's not just about you really have to be skilled just to get into a job, but you always have to keep inventing or upskilling yourself to remain relevant for that particular movement, and how are you kind of remain employable as well.
That's right.
Coming to you, Mr. Girish, I mean, NASSCOM has been responsible for the skill creation. I also understand the skill gap analysis, prepare the talent for future. Would just like to understand your view on the current skilling ecosystem for the IT sector.
Well, first of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been my privilege to be part of this discussion, and thanks for inviting me for this session. And coming to this evolving skill ecosystem, or the environment, how it is, I fully agree with what Mr. Dependra was saying, is that skilling is never a one-time activity, right? So it at an individual level, at an organizational level, at a national level, and of course, extending it at a universal level, it is a universal phenomenon. Otherwise, you either, you will perish. That is the reality today, and more so because, as you very rightly said, Sumit, is that as the technologies are getting obsolete by days, within days they are getting obsolete. It is always necessary that one should be up to date with what is happening, and what is current today will be obsolete tomorrow. So it is a continuous learning process. I again emphasize on that. That should be the DNA of every individual and every industry and every nation going forward, because coming from that perspective from the NASSCOM side, when we see globally, nationally, how the skilling ecosystem is evolving and what's happening out there, this is coming out very, very clearly, like more than ever before, continuous skilling. And currently we are talking of upskilling. That is because we have got some luggage to carry in the industry. And as the new workforce comes in, setting up this DNA in the organization at an individual level also, that continuous skilling, upskilling is the only way to survive and sustain. Having said that, current now about the skilling ecosystem per se, how it is evolving and all, as you said, since the technologies are getting obsolete day by day and new technologies are emerging, just about 2 months ago, we did a survey, and in that, typically these technologies like web and web development, mobile development, cloud computing, AI, it is in that order: AI and big data analysis, IoT, and cybersecurity. In all these technologies put together, currently we have a gap of 650,000 places to be filled in. We are not able to fill them. And
why would that so that they're not able to fill up that? I mean,
no, that's again, non-availability of the required skill, as Dependra was saying, non-availability of the required skill. This is at all levels. I'm not talking only at the entry level. This is at all levels. As an industry put together, this is the gap that we are having. So today, and lucky for us, and demography is on our side as far as India is concerned. We have the most, educated talent pool, which can be, skilled and put to work. But one good thing is that across the world, our shortage, which is about 21% based on the supply percentage of supply, what we are having, we are only at 21%. It's not that we have to pat on our back for being only 20%, but nevertheless, we are the gap what we are having is the smallest compared to other countries in the world. Even China has got a much bigger gap to catch up to. Having said that, this gap is going to increase by 3 times in the next till 2026.
Okay, that's quite huge.
That's huge. Almost, it's going to be close to 1.75 million. So this, how we are going to bridge this gap is what? This is the kind of ecosystem that is evolving. And for that purpose, unfortunately, our academic system currently is definitely not able to match up to this requirement. And that's what I think Mr. Dependra was also alluring to, the fact that, even the freshers have to be, brought to a certain level of skills, and then they can be inducted into value creation processes, right? So that takes some time. How much we can reduce this time from students coming out of the college and skilling them and getting on to the real value creation process, that is the key for future success and sustainability. And that is the ecosystem that is evolving. And that is where, all these companies like Coursera's, Udemy's, and, Udix and Edcast and so on and so forth, they're all really doing flourishing business. I would say they are doing, though they are earning money for what they are doing, but I would say they are doing a service also to the humanity, I would say. And on that front, I would say that, this is the skilling. If I can compare that with some food industry, skilling today has become like a fast food. It has to be churned out day in and out, hot as possible and served as hot as possible. So for that purpose, there are various ways and means that can be adopted. Of course, academia has to focus probably on the course developing and teaching the core skills, and then applications could be, later developed on them, and on top of that, and the skill, thus the freshers can develop further applications and usability and so on and so forth. So, but all these things put together for future, you asked me the question as to how we can tackle this for the future for sustainability and all. That is where, we do have this, what is called from NASSCOM side is that we have gotten this initiative called Future Skill Prime, which is a aggregator of aggregators kind of stuff. To put it in simple terms, is that there, if you log in, you will see all these new age emerging technologies, 10 technologies, and the soft skills available there. Of course, there are some courses which are charged. Many of them are free. So I think instantly skilling oneself and also the company, and thereby extending it to the nation, is what is the need of the hour, and that is where all our efforts are to be focused upon. That's what I would say, Sumit.
Sure. But help me also understand, you mentioned about, that how some of the organizations are doing well, which kind of indicates that probably there are takers for these programs. And I assume that these are more short-term programs where people can come and upskill themselves. It's just layering themselves with the relevant skills and then, get employed. But what's your assessment? Since NASSCOM is responsible for, from the supply side of it, how do you see that youth reacting to these such courses? What's their take? Are they forthcoming? Is there some little bit? And what's the completion rate for these things? If you could just help us, those behaviors, if you could help us understand.
Sure. I see that the Future Skill platform per se has been launched just about in its full form and feature has been launched just about 10, 12 months past. And that too during the pandemic era. So we can see the hindrances and problems that we would have faced. But nevertheless, it is really picking up. And in fact, most of the companies who are kind of using it for their, typically the HR people, they are using it for their continuous development plan, as part of the continuous development plan. And certifications are also increasing, though numbers are not really very big. Since still it is in the initial stages, I would say it is picking up, but it has got a lot of value to offer. And not that every course is free. And there are all these courses are as per the international standards of courses and skill standards and things like that. And there are certifications which are industry endorsed. Say, for example, Microsoft and Cisco's of this world, IBM's of this world, they are endorsing many of the courses which are, of course, which they have contributed to this platform. So that way, since they are industry endorsed, the uptick, it definitely is going to happen. And also, since they are industry endorsed, industries would not be having any hesitation in hiring these people once they see these certifications, right? So, of course, it has to snowball into its own momentum and keep rolling on. And the proof of the pudding would be that after certification, this has to happen, that people are getting jobs and they are successful, and that should spread. So it will take a little bit of time, but definitely we are on the path, very strongly on the path.
So I think I aptly mentioned that the initiative that you talked about really has to snowball and take a much larger shape. But if I were to just look at in whichever size it is operating right now, are there any metrics in place today where you say that what's the impact of it? Do you have any idea how many people are getting jobs? Is it trackable right now, or
it is trackable? It is trackable. Today on our platform, we have more than 5 million registrations, which is, I think, in a shorter period of time, that is one of the biggest, I would say. And there are 40% of them are registering for the assessments also. Again, completion rate is also run. Unfortunately, though, I don't have the figures right now, but nevertheless, that is really coming up, certifications. And of course, all those people, in many cases, what is happening is this is part of the upskilling initiative from the organizations. So people who are getting certified, they're already there, employed somewhere. What is also happening is, unless somebody is employed, the government of India will not be, they will not be eligible for government of India's incentive for using these future schemes. So hence it is a catch-22 situation. But nevertheless, for those people, and that is where apprenticeship will come in very handy. We will discuss about that a little later.
Of course, that will take a little.
So I would say numbers are picking, and only, as I said, it will take a little bit more time for the people who are getting certified to get jobs and be successful there.
Sure. Dependra, coming to what Mr. Kulkarni just mentioned about the initiative like a Future Skills and how those courses are available, and how NASSCOM is also collaborating with some of the organizations to develop that talent pool or the talent supply chain. Would really like to understand some of the initiatives which possibly Infosys is currently, taken to create this the talent thing, or how our youth as an organization are bridging the skill gap or catering to the future skill needs. So any initiatives you would like to kind of throw about?
Yeah, so I think the first place which is there is that, all our organizations are in that sense legacy organizations. We've been there as a company for almost 40 years. And I'm sure many of the other people in the industry who are large enough have been there for many years. There, of course, there's an ecosystem of startups, etc. But the fact is that, we already have a very large base of people who are skilled in some technology or in some, may not be very relevant today. So the first thing is to ensure that, they have the hunger and they have the incentive to go and train themselves and get themselves skilled into an area which is futuristic. So I think a lot of work which is happening around many of the companies is that how do you create that hunger, and how do you, bring people to the learning in which they invest in themselves and upskill their own skills to ensure that they are more employable by the company and they are future ready. I think that's one part which all companies are doing that. In our organization, we've at Infosys, we've started an initiative which is called the skill tag, that the moment somebody completes a particular course and builds up some kind of a skill for a futuristic digital requirement, there are the person can can talk about that tag, that look, I'm skilled in this particular area, and can put it up in LinkedIn or in the internal forums, which gives that person some kind of a recognition. And obviously, if somebody is skilling in some area which is which our clients appreciate more and are willing to pay more, obviously a part of that also gets transferred to the employees. So I think that's one place that we have focused on, and I'm sure that that is going to help our employees who are already there in the company for for several years and keep them current and ensure that they are well taken care of. There are two other, sorry,
please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the problem which is there is not just in commercial in nature, and I'm coming to that part which is related to the ESG. Infosys has got a very strong ESG vision, and one of the aspects of the ESG vision is to ensure that we skill 10 million people by 2025 across the world on the latest skills, on the latest digital skills, because we truly believe that the digital skills today are skills which will lead to future employment of people. And and if we are able to create that ecosystem of training 10 million people through our Infosys program, which is called the Infosys Springboard, I'm sure that that be the number of people coming into the industry, and that's the number of people who will get into future employability in whichever organization. So I think that's something which Infosys is doing in a very big way, trying to push this. This is free of cost, and this actually becomes some kind of a partnership or a precursor to many of the other things which the industry is trying to do, including some of the apprentice programs, Sumit, that TeamLease is pushing. So I think that's something that one is doing at an industry level, and that will definitely make a difference when it comes to how the industry sees talent. Of course, none of these things are short-term in nature. It takes months, quarters, and years before you'll start seeing the impact of that. But somewhere we have to start, and it's good that all of us are talking about a very important area today.
True. But tell me, like you mentioned about various initiatives, what about, and I think Mr. Kulkarni also kind of touched upon that, how the academics currently lack, that skilling aspect of it, or how they kind of, train people on these skills which are required. And obviously it clearly talks about the industry disconnect, which the academics have, at this point of time. But I would just like to, understand if there are any industry academic connects which Infosys has, or anything that you are aware of which is happening like this in the industry. Do you think something like this exists, and how relevant and how well it is working?
Yeah, I think a very important area which has been debated multiple times is that what is the role of education and what's the role of skilling, and whether the educational institutions need to focus, how much of focus should they put upon on skilling, or how much of the focus they need to put upon holistic education. And I think everybody's thought process in this area has been the fact that educational institutions have to focus on holistic education, which basically builds overall capability, builds characters of people, makes them the right citizens that the country really needs. And that's the role of an educational institution. What you study in 2015 as your as a skill at that point in time, that when you go to the computer lab and you learn something there, is probably very different from what is required in 2022. And that gap between what has been taught as a part of holistic education to what is required in 2022 or 23 and 24 is something which has to be bridged through multiple forums. One forum, of course, for that is all these edtech companies which have come in. I think they're of course NASSCOM are doing so many things from their side. But it's ultimately, it's not just about picking up a new skill, it's also about applying a skill. And I think that's the place which I'm extremely bullish about. And I would really like the industry to focus on the fact that there are programs like apprenticeships which are required, and that's the only way that a learned skill can be applied on the ground and people can become better and better at it.
Since you both have touched upon apprenticeships, and it's something which is the agenda for today. I mean, that's the larger agenda that we want to cover, and it's a tried and trusted model everywhere. And well, there's an acceptance from you also that as a mechanism or as a process, it's kind of it can yield results. But why in IT industry being the largest employer in the country, yet the intake of apprenticeship is so low? Is that could be tagged as one of the reasons that why we are grappling with the skill crunch? Or what's your take on
that? I think people have not given enough thought towards it. And I think when one is taking on apprentices in the organization, and we are in the early stages of adopting that, is the fact that there is definitely some initial investment, because the apprentices are not really meant for full-time production. There's a lot of learning which goes into it. I think that's one part of it. Second is that our own awareness, and I'm sure that you're trying your best there, Sumit, but I'm sure that between what the government intends and what companies hear, there is a big gap, because I think everybody's focused on here and now. And I think as we start talking more and more about apprenticeships, people realize that that's a way in which you can build sustainable talent pools, which can.
I think you made a very interesting point here, that what the government says and what the industry hears, there's a gap. Is there some biasness because of which that filtration process happens, that the understanding is not there? What do you think that why there's a gap which exists, and what is it that industry is visualizing or have an impression about apprenticeships?
Yeah, I think the primary thing which is there is that it's something, if one takes on apprenticeship today, it will take a few months, a few quarters before people will get productive to the level that our customers want. So therefore, there will be some element of investment. There will be some element of the fact that you would be saddled with people who are not fully productive, and I think that's one of the things which are there. But the other part which is there is that I think many people have not given it enough thought, and as an industry, we need to get together and saying that, look, it's really stupid to keep hiring from each other. And of course, the world is doing great with Swiggy and Zomato and so many other fast food delivery options, but you don't get talent on Swiggy or Zomato. You have to build talent, and if one doesn't do it, it is really short-sighted. And all of us as industry have to realize and participate in multiple skilling initiatives which are required for our organization.
So there is a lack of impatience, you mean to say that, obviously people want a quick results or quick solutions, but there is no quick fix kind of
There's no quick fix, absolutely no quick fix.
It has to be baked well, so
Yeah.
that you get to eat your cake, and the cake is right and that you get to eat, and that has to be a continuous process. Right. Mr. Kulkarni, what's your take on it? I mean, you would have seen the way apprenticeship is getting accepted in the industry. How is it? Like, do you think it's getting accepted at the pace what it should be? And also, would you want to throw light on some of the best practices, whether it's within the country or whether it's some international best practices, if you would like to throw upon, which can be little, a knowledge for the sector to kind of understand how they could possibly look at apprenticeship as a possible solution to fix this skill, problem.
Thanks, Sumit. 3.5 years, since last 3.5 years, this has been my passion, right? Apprenticeship has been my passion. And actually, you know what? There is a misconception with Dependra's permission. I'd like to say this, that there's a misconception that apprenticeship is a very slow yielding investment. I would rather say, if you compare that with even in any organization, fresher hiring, how that process works. The candidates, even when they're studying itself, maybe in their 7th and 8th semester itself, they are in some of the companies, they are identified, and the organizations are giving access to their database and platforms, and they are learning online. And then by the time they come on board, after they're finishing their final exam, and after that also there is going to be about 3-4 months or 5 months of induction training or whatever, and then they become really deployable for the job, and that too very basic level jobs. So the time that is being spent in nurturing or skilling the fresher to bring that person to a value creation level is that investment is anyway being made. So what we are saying is that itself can be brought under the umbrella of apprenticeship. Exactly what they are doing is nothing but apprenticeship training itself.
Yeah, and but sorry, I mean to cut you here, Mr. Kulkarni. Like, while you really said that, yes, whatever probation which is happening could be done under the apprenticeship, which is one of the same thing. It's just that it's a different system, right? Correct. But what's your take where through apprenticeship, they could possibly reach out to those channels which they were not considering? Like, I'm referring probably, they look at certain campuses, which an organization may not want to go, but there could be a potential talent, which could be there. Certain geographies, probably, where they can experiment with the talent, getting talent.
Absolutely.
So something like that. Don't you think that would be a better way rather than just, looking at switching, the broader parameter, like from probation, you take it under apprenticeship. But apprenticeship could help them kind of widening their pool or their probability or the possibility of getting the talent.
Definitely, yes. But, the first step would be to break that impasse in their minds of these organizations that apprenticeship is not value. I mean, it's not adding value to their business. That is, I think it is a misconception that definitely apprenticeship is going to add value to their businesses, and also there are incentives also to be availed from the government and all. So let's not dwell on that. But definitely, today most of these companies, if they're, as you very rightly saying, that if they're focusing only on those institutions wherein they're going for campus interviews and all, and just rather than looking at only that smaller pocket, if they can widen their net and go to the interiors, tier 2, tier 3 cities, even other cities also, they definitely can widen their net. And with the technologies now being available, even the training can happen online, they can go to the, any corner of this country, right? So definitely, and with the technology that is available on hand, the cost of training such resources also would be comparatively less, rather than having them come here on the campus and train and things like that. So definitely, it is a win-win, I would say, for the organizations, and the apprenticeship is the route to nurture their future talents. And plus, in some companies, there are definitely the benefits that in some companies who are paying their CSR dues to the organization, government. They actually, after a certain limit, they can use their CSR funds to train their future resources. CSR funds can be used for training the apprenticeship training. So there are so many benefits out there, but I think, the perception that apprenticeship is not yielding any benefit to the organization, or it is a burden or a legal compliance burden to the organization. I think that unfortunately, that is how it was implemented in the beginning. And of late, there have been a lot of changes in that, improvements in that. It's become very, very user-friendly and industry-friendly.
Yeah, could you please possibly throw light on maybe one or two pertinent amendments or the changes that have happened, which give little clarity to the industry that yes, these are the changes which has happened, and that is more for the benefit of the industry and it making more convenient and flexible for the industry.
First and foremost, I would say from the IT industry perspective, this online training was not acceptable as far as the apprenticeship law was concerned. We got it changed, and now at least for the basic training, online training of apprentices is acceptable. Second change that we made was that this age limit of earlier it was 21 years. There was confusion there. Now anybody who's above the age of 18 years is eligible for apprenticeship, and even we got this change for the working during the second shift also. Now that is as per legally that is acceptable. And there are quite a few of them. I would say just these are the top of my head that are coming to my mind right now. Quite a few changes that have been, and also flexibility of this course creation, which is more relevant and relevant to the organization depending on their value creation processes, in what area they want to train. They can create their own course, and they can engage apprentices in training them, so that there won't be any mismatch. Whatever they are training, further those candidates, if found suitable, can be pressed into value creation process in their organization. So there are quite a few changes like this, host of them, I would say. And the entire one, most importantly, I would say, the entire operation of apprenticeship is all online. There is like in the past, they used to run to pillar to post to many government organizations to file different papers, returns, and so on and so forth. Now all that is taken away. It's all online. And we have got almost just to give you a perception. In the last 3 years, we have onboarded more than 1,700 new organizations on apprenticeship, onboarded them who have started using apprentices. And so over to you. Hope that answered your question.
No, of course, definitely. I think that would be very encouraging for organizations to look the kind of convenience which is getting baked into the system, how it's more becoming industry friendly, how it's encouraging employers to execute apprenticeships. I think that is where probably Dependra was saying that what the government wants to say is not what the industry is hearing. So I think that lack of understanding, I think there has to be much more clarity which needs to be given by the government, make it more simpler, at least they communicate that simplicity, which they are trying to bake into the system. It's not that it's not being done, but I think that messaging aspect has to be really, focused upon, right?
Yep.
Now, both of you kind of mentioned about this whole academic things, that, talking about how the things, things are not part of the curriculum and how they get obsolete by the time they churn out of their colleges and everything, or pass out of the colleges and all. In the new education policy, where it talks about the blending of skilling with mainstream education, how do you get more return on education, which is purely talks about the job readiness. And obviously the concept of degree-linked apprenticeship or degree apprenticeship has also been introduced. And this is something which is very different from the way the BWalk was getting, implemented, which was more like a short-term practical training, was it? But here it's more credit-based programs which have been, introduced. So what's your take on this? Do you think that this as a partnership between the industry and academics could really work well in the form of degree apprenticeship, where you try to tackle it right from the grassroots level? How do you make the preparation right so that you get your desired results in form of that right candidate for your organization or for the industry? So viewpoints of both of you, please, on that.
Should I go first?
Please, anybody.
Okay, with your permission, Dependra. I think this you actually by apprenticeship and embedded degree course, it is kind of catering to the requirements of all the stakeholders, right? And apprenticeship, why it has not been successful? Only because it was not aspirational. Why it was not aspirational? Because after anybody who was into apprenticeship would have kind of have, after losing out of on every opportunity or possible aspiration after, saying that nothing is possible, then he or she would come to apprenticeship. So apprenticeship was not aspirational. Why it was not aspirational? Because after apprenticeship, there was no guarantee of sustainable job after that. And why organizations were not kind of very keen to engage apprentices was only because after apprenticeship, many organizations did it just for the sake of compliance. And in some cases, they wanted to do it for a cheaper labor, and that too a short-term cheap labor. But after that, there was no, like the way it happens in Germany and all, wherein they have these dual systems, wherein even a candidate coming from apprenticeship route also can be the CEO of the organization. There have been many examples of that. So, and also another thing was that apprentices up till now in our academic system, they did not have any credit equivalence. So that, after accumulating certain amount of credits, they can apply for future educational qualifications and things like that, or degree courses and things like that. That is even today, I think it has come into existence with the new education policy. Probably, we are aligning with this new education policy, and credits would be earned after completing apprenticeship and all that. That definitely will come in the future. But up till now, it was not the case. So here, the candidate would get, in this apprenticeship embedded degree course, a candidate would get his guarantee of a future job. Company would get a skilled work manpower after going through that training. And it is a win-win for both. So there is a sustainability on either sides. And there is, hence, I would say this is the best way. And, going forward, if all the colleges, even the engineering colleges there used to be something like a sandwich course, even in engineering also sometime in the past. 6 months of their course last year, final year, and a candidate was placed in an organization. I did come through that stream. So maybe that can come back in the degree apprenticeship embedded degree course can come into force. I see this to be a very, very valuable proposition. It should be made compulsory in all academic system.
Yeah, I think that's how it's going to be, because we're talking about, also the work integrated programs, where every program, be technical and non-technical, will have a bit of industry exposure and the industry connect. And of course, they're going to be this full-fledged degree apprenticeship program, which are going to focus more on the practicality or the application, and of course, dwell on the theory as well. Dependra, what's your take on it? What do you think that how this new education policy or the degree apprenticeship could build that industry academia connect which has been missing, and how it can solve the skill crisis for the industry, and I would say the employability crisis for the youth?
The new education policy is a great way forward, and it's taken its time in coming, and I'm glad that it's finally seen the light of the day. All the focus area of the new education policy, among other things, is to ensure that there is more options for candidates, for students at different stages of their life. They may take breaks in between. There are social pressures, there are economic pressures. There are so many pressures which people face, and our old or our current education system was not geared up to handle those pressures. And what you had in that sense was a lot of people who are dropping out of the educational system, and they would remain underemployed all through their lives. Underemployed, or at some point in time they would lose their employments, and then that was something which was not really right. But I'm so glad that the new education policy has thought through a lot of these things, and a lot of those things that which are there are in that sense akin to apprenticeship also happening at some point in time. And I'm sure that some of these things, the industry's own understanding of how it can partner with academia, the students' own understanding that it's good to be doing these kind of apprenticeships at during the course of their career. I think if all of these things get together, I see a future which is very nice. And but in all of these things, what one really requires is to have the right kind of ecosystem. So it's good to partner, of course, with NASSCOM. It's good to partner with a lot of other companies, and of course, very good to partner with you, Sumit, to ensure that all these things see the light of the day, because not every organization can do a lot of things by themselves. I think it's ultimately the ecosystem that all of us create for ourselves.
That's right.
That
Absolutely.
we partner, we collaborate. You do things that you're good at. We do things that we are good at. We partner. We do things right. And I'm sure that this creates a positive flywheel of success.
Definitely. I think the way education is going to be, it's no longer going to be bilateral, it's going to be more trilateral. Right now we talk about just the student and the education institute, or just the employee or an apprentice or an employer. But I think now we're heading towards a system where it has to be the student or the youth. We want to talk about the industry, and we're talking about the academia, how the three have to work together, and only then we will be able to overcome or tide through this particular skill problem that's keep erupting time and again. I think it was a wonderful having this conversation with both of you. I'm sure, Mr. Kulkarni mentioned that it's a topic which is something which is very close to our heart, and it clearly reflects from you as well, Dependra, that how keenly like you are involved in developing talent, and also how forthcoming you and your organization are in taking any such initiatives that can bridge the skill problem. Thank you both of you for joining us today. It was wonderful conversing with both of you, and I'm sure with this conversation we would be spreading a lot of knowledge, a lot of awareness, and encourage a lot of organizations to come forward and do apprenticeships. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting us to this panel. Also very nice, Girish, interacting with you. And, I'm sure that we can do a lot of things together.
Surely. Thank you very much, Dependra and Sumit. It's really been a pleasure. Nice discussion. A lot of things to be done, and always there to work together with you in any forum, any platform that is required. Thank you very much.